What up, what up, what up? How y'all doing? I'm doing great as usual. Before I get started, I want to give a quick shout out to the Boxing Voice, Ness, and the whole TBV fam. I also want to give a shout out to Real Talk Boxing. For whatever reason that you may or may not be subscribed to either one of those two channels, make sure you leave right now and go subscribe. Good people that love the sport of boxing. But my video today is about the upcoming fight this weekend. The bigger fight of this weekend. That would be CANELO versus yildirim. Now, you got to ask yourself, why is this fight happening? Why is it happening? Well, the simple fact is that it's CANELO's mandatory. And CANELO is getting ready and gearing up to go wipe out the rest of the 168-pound division, which would be Billy Joe Saunders, another Matchroom fighter, and then, of course, you got Caleb Plant on the PBC. And to do that, for one, he needs to get rid of his mandatory, so he can just do those fights back to back. If he beats yildirim this Saturday, he's going to fight Billy Joe at the beginning of May. And then I'm assuming he's going to go and fight Plant in September if he beats Billy Joe Saunders. That's the schedule he's looking to take. So that's the why the fight is happening. But how is the fight happening? Because when CANELO was with Golden Boy and DAZN, keyword and DAZN were not approving these type of fights for CANELO. They were only willing to approve, a trilogy fight with Triple G, or like what they called premier names, like a Conor McGregor fight, or somehow he could get Mayweather to come back out of retirement and give him that rematch to try to avenge his only loss. I forget what other names they had on that list, but they were just outlandish. Maybe Khabib, the other MMA fighter. But DAZN wouldn't approve opponents like yildirim. And the reason why DAZN wouldn't sign off on broadcasting that fight is because DAZN would have to pay Golden Boy $40 million. And then Golden Boy would take that $40 million and give CANELO his $35. That's how that original deal was structured and how it broke down. So ask yourself, why is he's fighting on the zone now, and why is he able to fight yildirim now on the zone if they weren't able to, or if the zone didn't want that fight when he was with Golden Boy? For the simple fact is that Eddie Hearn didn't structure his original deal around CANELO. When Eddie Hearn signed his deal with DAZN, CANELO was with Golden Boy. And they gave Eddie a big lump sum of money, whatever his budget is. I forget what it was, like $1 billion, something crazy. I should have looked up the exact numbers, but anyway, Eddie Hearn had his own budget separate from what the Golden Boy and CANELO's deal was. So all Eddie Hearn is doing is saying, hey, CANELO, come fight for Matchroom and DAZN. But hey, DAZN, you don't have to give me any extra money for CANELO. I'm just going to take the money that you gave me in my original budget. So it's really nothing to... It's really like it's not a contract between CANELO and DAZN. It's a contract between CANELO and Matchroom. And Eddie just agreed to have him fight on DAZN so he could use that budget. But it wasn't like a CANELO-DAZN DAZN deal. It's a CANELO Matchroom deal. It's different. I know it's probably hard to understand, but it's just different. Eddie already had the money, and he's just allocating money from his original budget to make this fight happen. So DAZN tells Eddie Hearn, the owner of Matchroom, yeah, do whatever you want with your budget. We gave you a budget. Yes, we accept that fight. That's simple and easy why this fight's happening. And obviously, Eddie's probably giving CANELO a decent deal, but it's a package deal to fight his other champion, Billy Joe Saunders. So that's how this fight's happening. I told you why this fight's happening, and you got to respect Canelo Alvarez. You know, he's very, how do I say it? He's got some really hardcore fans behind him, or he's got some really hardcore haters behind him. But I think most, if not all, young fighters should look at the Canelo's pathway, his career, and follow that route. Nowadays, we're seeing all these younger fighters who want to do the Money Mayweather route. And what I mean by that is having good fights, but mostly really only caring about protecting that undefeated record. You know, Canelo has taken risk after risk after risk. And after he lost to Floyd Mayweather, it wasn't that he's any less of a star because he lost to Floyd Mayweather. He's still considered the biggest star in boxing, even with a loss. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say to the younger fighters out there. Just because you lose one time in the sport of boxing, it doesn't mean your career is over. It doesn't mean you can't get big paydays down the road. And it doesn't mean that you will lose fans. I would still follow a fighter if he had 20 losses. But every one of those 20 losses, he was in a tear-up in a crazy fight that we're all remembering. You know, I don't care about the win-loss record. Yes, it's fun to talk about, you know, this guy's better than that guy because he's got no losses. Well, I'd rather have a fighter. I'd rather back a fighter and pay money to see a fighter who's in real fights. And I hate to go back to this because I did a video about 50-50 fights versus, you know, A level versus Z level the other day. But it's just the type of fan that I am. I don't care about the win-losses. I want to see good fights. And if you give the fans the good fights, and if you come up on the short ends, you're still going to have plenty of fans. You might even gain some fans. And if you're in top quality fights, even if you lose, you're still going to make really good money. That's just how it should work. I mean, some promoters, some contracts out there, you know, the stipulations and contracts nowadays that, oh, if you lose, then your minimum your guarantee goes down for your next 3 fights. It's just crazy in these contracts. So maybe that's part of the reason why these fighters are going to try to do the Floyd Mayweather route. You know, fight decent names, but names everybody's expecting you to beat to protect that undefeated record. And then at the very end, cash in with 2 or 3 big fights. I'm saying go through your career having big fights. Make decent paychecks all the way through your career. Don't make crappy paycheck, hopefully to get to that big mega fight at the end of the tunnel. That's what I wish these 135-pound division, the whole division, there's like so many good fights in that division, and not one of them are lined up or scheduled to fight each other. Not one. There's like 6, 7, 8 decent fighters in the 135-pound division, and not one. There's not 2 of them in that list that are fighting each other. Not one fight is made out of all those good fighters. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. They should all fight each other twice, round robin, win or lose. But so yeah, that's what I think about how Canelo's career has gone. I think a lot of young fighters need to try to emulate that. Come in young and, make your mark right away and fight stiff competition, Maybe Canelo's a little bit different because he turned pro when he was 15 and he was fighting grown men at that age. But, yeah, after this weekend, if Canelo beats Yildirim, he's going to go on another tear of champions. Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. And according to Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, Billy Joe Saunders is going to be in Miami for the fight. So I'm assuming he's going to jump in the ring after the fight and announce it. And I'm also assuming that Billy Joe Saunders is going to try to start messing with Canelo throughout the week. Showing up at his press conference or just trying to run into him at the hotel. Doing any little thing to get a mind advantage before they fight. Because, let's be clear. Canelo should almost 100% win this fight. And that's fine. Because he fights champions nonstop. This is mandatory. Get him out of the way. Then go on another run of champions. So, that's this Saturday, of course, in Miami. Canelo versus Yildirim. Billy Joe Saunders is going to be there watching the fight. Going to jump in the ring afterwards. I'm almost certain. On the rest of that card, on the A side, you got the undefeated Chinese guy that Matchroom signed, Zili Zhang. I'm butchering his name. I apologize. Then you got Diego Pacheco, a young kid, super middleweight. And then you also got Alex Espino, a super middleweight. Kind of Matchroom USA's younger fighters. Both are undefeated. Alexis Espino, I think, is 6-0, 7-0. And Pacheco's 10-0, 11-0. Right around there. Both younger fighters, both super middleweights. Both fighting for pretty much Matchroom USA. So is that a potential big fight that Matchroom is going to start trying to build up? Because they're both wonderful fighters. I actually like Alexis Espino. Of course, you'd see a lot of that kid if you watch Ellie Setback, ES News, because he's always in the Robert Garcia gym. And that's where Espino trains out of. And if you've been a DAZN member, you would have seen Alexis Espino fight 3 or 4 times already. And then you got the young kid who just made his debut on Canelo's last card, I believe. Yeah, I think it was a Callum Smith and Canelo card. As a kid by the name of Mark Castro. He's 1-0. It's very he was actually very sought after by promotional companies. But he looked a little nervous in his first fight. But you can tell he's going to be a good fighter down the road. So that's the American card that we got going on this weekend in the U.S. We also got BT Sport and Frank Warren Queensberry card in the UK. And I think we have a Clarissa Shields fight this weekend. I'll have to look into it, but I'm going to look up the other cards that are going on besides the Canelo card and talk about them later on in the week. Maybe do a gambling gambling money line show, going through the fights and my opinions. But yeah, so there you have it. Just a short video. Everybody showing up in Miami, getting ready for the big fight, and we'll see how it goes. Obviously, I think Canelo's gonna win, and then it'll be a clear path for Cinco de Mayo. Is that when Canelo fights? Early May, with Billy Joe Saunders. So for this week, I came up with the name last week. Fights you may not have seen, and fights that you should see if you're a casual boxing fan. I'm calling this segment Bandwagon Fights, because once you watch these fights, you will jump on the boxing bandwagon. I truly believe that. And I also want to give a shout out to Upheaval 963, a newer subscriber that I believe came from Real Talks Boxing's channel, because he's helping me out and giving me shout outs at the end of his videos. So I appreciate that, Real Talk Boxing. And I appreciate the new subs that have all flooded over here from there. I didn't write them all down, but I wanted to give a shout out to Upheaval 963 with a bandwagon fight. And that fight is Diego Chico Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo. It's a great fight. Of course, I've seen it. Castillo was one of my all-time favorite fighters. And that was a suggestion from Upheaval 963. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all the new subscribers. I'm 2 away from my goal of 50 before I start going live and hanging out with you guys. It's tough. I've been itching to go live, but when I set a short-term goal, I like to stick to it. So I need 2 more subscribers before I hit 50, and then I'm going to figure out how to go live with all y'all and hang out with the people. So do me a favor, like always, like, subscribe, and share. Peace. Morehouse.